Hello, class. This is the week 6 content video. And as I mentioned Friday, we're going to start changing things up a little bit. So during the first 5 weeks, I have made the effort to present very similar information as you're getting in your textbook and present that in class. So we're going to change that up a little bit and make the classes more interesting. The textbook still needs to be read. That is still your responsibility to get the information out of your books and out of your supplemental reading that's in your task list. In class, we'll be expanding on that, and I'll be bringing in different things to help expand our understanding of these concepts. And if you have questions after reading certain concepts in the book, please bring them to class and ask them. Know that the first question I'm going to ask you back is, what did the book say about it? So know what the book said, and then we can figure out what was unclear for you and move forward with that and just get your questions answered so that you understand. All right, so this week's content. We first discussed the midterm. There's 60 questions. You'll have 70 minutes to complete it. It is taken in class, so bring your laptops. I have posted a study guide in the announcements for you. So look at that study guide this week. And it's taken through Cengage. So make sure you can log in prior to class. I believe everyone already has. Understand it's a difficult test, but it is the only test that you will take in this class. Everything else from here on out is just going to be your papers, your assignments, and your work. All right, in weeks 4 and 5, we looked at strategy at the level of the business and focused on the factors and approaches that can lead to competitive advantage and superior performance. Then week 6, we take this a step further by standing back to consider strategy at a higher level, corporate strategy. The concern here is for performance benefits that are derived from pulling together an effective portfolio of business. In other words, it's putting businesses together in a way that makes sense and can generate synergies between the business units. The discussion of this chapter builds towards a summary that's presented in figure 6.4 in your books. So it might be helpful to take a look at that figure. So this is figure 6.4 from your book. So look this over in preparation. Make sure you understand the strategies and how they all work together. If not, bring your questions. The Walt Disney Company has pursued a related diversification strategy, and this is in effect what we're talking about with corporate strategy. It's pursued a related diversification strategy by using its movies to create franchises and platforms around its popular cartoon and action movie figures. While competitive content providers have weakened through lower TV ratings, Disney has strengthened through its other businesses, including consumer products, interactive consumer products, interactive parks and resorts, and studio entertainment parks, and a strong cable franchise. Disney's strategy is successful because its corporate strategy, compared to its business level strategy, adds value across a set of businesses above what the individual businesses could create. In addition, the corporation has broad and deep knowledge about its customers. That is a corporate level capability in terms of advertising and marketing. So this capability, it allows it to cross-sell products highlighted in its movies through its media distribution channels, parks and resorts, as well as consumer product businesses. While many content creating competitors of Disney are facing revenue losses due to lower TV ratings, The Walt Disney Company is growing. It's growing through a related diversification strategy by using its movies to create franchises and platforms around its particular cartoon and action movie figures. Disney has several business units that it uses. Here are an example of some of the movie franchises that you may be familiar with. Now, in 2020, Disney had some very impressive revenue figures. Its media networks revenue is up considerably, likely due to the COVID pandemic. Its parks revenue is down about $10 billion, that is. Usually it's about 41% of the revenue. It's quite a bit lower than that for 2020, also likely due to COVID. Now let's talk about corporate level strategy from a personal standpoint. We all went through the diagramming class. On Wednesday, you went through it with Paul, and on Friday, I took you through it. And in the diagram, we saw that we all have limited resources. We have units or segments in our lives, just like organizations have business units. And we're trying to manage all of those segments and allocate the resources that we have to the different areas of our life that we're trying to manage. And we have to decide what to invest in. We have to decide also what not to invest in. And that's a critical part of strategy that is sometimes overlooked. It's just as important to decide what we're not going to invest in as what we are going to invest in. Sometimes more critical to decide where are we not going to spend our resources. And on a personal level, you've got to make those choices every day. You're going to have a ton of choices every day, things you could spend your time on and things that other people want you to spend your time on. And the demands are going to seem just unlimited at times. So you're going to have to be able to tell some people, no, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. Look, I love you, but I have other things I have to focus on right now. So you've got to decide what not to invest in. We have to work towards a synergy with all our goals and our mission and our vision for our lives, just like organizations do, and all the different silos or areas of our life that we're committing our resources to. So how do they all work together to push us towards our goals, to help us live out our personal vision and our personal mission in life? How do all these things work together? And if they don't work with the other areas of your life, that may be a very good indication that that area that's not working in synergy with the others may be an area you need to pull all your resources out of and leave that side alone. All right, so let's start with a basic definition of corporate level strategy. Remember that in weeks 4 and 5, the discussion was centered on selecting and implementing a business level or competitive strategy. Actions a firm should take to compete in a single industry or product market, and the actions and responses that affect the competitive dynamics of a single industry or product market. In contrast, when a firm diversifies its operations by operating in several industries or several market segments, corporate level strategy becomes the primary focus. This means that a diversified firm has 2 levels of strategy. There is the business level or competitive strategy and the corporate level or company-wide strategy. Corporate level strategy entails selecting a strategy that focuses on the selection and the management of a mix of businesses. Corporate level strategies detail actions taken to gain competitive advantage through the selection and the management of a mix of businesses competing in several industries or several product markets. Primary concerns of corporate level strategy are what business should the firm be in? And so we have to make a good decision. That's part of strategy. We don't just enter any market or any business and then hope it works out. We have to really look at the market, look at where potential is, look at what our resources are, look at what our strengths are, look at what we've got to know ourselves on a personal level. My personal example is that I was really good at the concepts of accounting, and I whizzed through accounting in high school. In 1 year, I did first year accounting, second year accounting, and first 6 months of a college accounting course, just whizzed through it in high school. In college, I got my accounting degree. My bachelor's is in accounting. But I don't have the personality type to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and just focus on those numbers and those analytics and do that kind of focused work without much interaction with other people, because I'm a very outgoing, people-oriented person. But if I had known myself better, like a company must know itself, if I had known my resources and my capabilities better, I would have realized that accounting wasn't the best choice for me, and I would have chosen a different path. You know, they say hindsight is 20/20. At this point, I probably would have chosen psychology, but that is not what happened, and so we're here. So what businesses should the firm be in? How should the corporate office manage its groups of businesses? That's another question. How can the corporation as a whole add up to more than the sum of its business parts? The ultimate measure of the value of a firm's corporate level strategy is that the businesses in the firm's portfolio are worth more under current management and by following the firm's corporate level strategy than they would be under different ownership or different management. And the value for the corporation is more with this particular mix of businesses than it would any of the single areas units would be by themselves. Now, there are different levels of diversification. So understand when we're talking about business level strategy, we are talking about an organization with multiple business lines, business units operating possibly in different industries. And that is called diversification. And so there are levels of diversification. Now, diversified firms vary according to two factors. The first is the level of diversification. And the second is the connection or linkages between and among business units. So firms will vary in their level of diversification, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, and whether there are connections between and among their business units. Low levels of diversification can include a single business. So that can be a small business that just does one main thing, or a larger business that is simply in one industry. And there are very large businesses that do that. Or you may have more than one business line, but one is dominant. That is still a low level of diversification. Moderate to high levels can be related and constrained or related and linked. And we'll explain those in a moment. And very high levels mean that they may have, let's say, 5, 7, however many different business units or different industries. But they are each business unit is completely unrelated from all the others. That means that each business unit has to have its own set of resources, its own capabilities, its own core competencies, and that becomes very difficult to manage. Now, let's talk about low levels of diversification. Firms that follow a single or dominant business strategies have low levels of diversification. A single business is a firm where more than 95% of its revenues are generated by the dominant business. So if a single business generates more than 95% of the revenues of that business, it has a low level of diversification, no matter how many business units it has. Firms such as, well, the dominant business is one that generates 95% of its sales within a single business area. So firms such as the Wrigley Company are examples of single business firms. Wrigley Company has dominated the global gum-related industry as the largest manufacturer of chewing gum, specialty gums, and gum bases. Its brands, Doublemint, Spearmint, Juicy Fruit, have led in the market. So a dominant business is a firm that generates between 70 to 95% of its sales within a single business area. Now, there are moderate and high levels of diversification. So these are businesses that are in more than one industry. So they have more than one business unit. And there's different types that fall into this category. There's related diversified, there's related constrained, there's related linked, there's unrelated diversified. All right, so let's talk about related diversified. Related diversification occurs when the company adds to or expands its existing line of production or markets. In these cases, the company starts manufacturing a new product or penetrates a new market that's related to the business activity they're already engaged in. So Disney's purchase of ABC is a good example. That says ABS, but it should say ABC. So related diversified. Related means that we're going to diversify into an area that's related to what we're already doing. Related constrained. It means that less than 70% of your revenue comes from the dominant business, and all businesses share the same product, technological, and distribution linkages. With a related constraint strategy, a firm shares resources and activities between its businesses. So, related constraint means you have multiple businesses. No single business unit generates 70% or more of the total revenue, and they all share resources, product, technological, and distribution resources. A good example of this is BIC, yes, the pen company. All of its products, they make razors, cigarette lighters, pens. They share significant commonalities of the same plastic injection molding process, the same brand name, the same retail distributions. They're sent to the same retail outlets. And you walk into a grocery store and it will sell BIC razors, BIC lighters, BIC pens. So that's related constraint. Constraint means that no business relates, or no business produces more than 70% of the income. All right, so let's talk about a different concept now. There is a term in the business world, and it's called VUCA, V-U-C-A. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, this term was developed by the U.S. Army War College many, many, many years ago. But it is a very common term today in business. So looking at this chart here, you can see on the bottom it says, how much do you know about the situation? Going from 0 to, let's say 10. Let's say 10 is our biggest number. And then up along the vertical axis,
you can't really see it here, is how likely are you to predict the outcome? So let's talk about each one of these items. Volatility. It means the speed of change in an industry, market, or the world in general. So it means a lot of fluctuation in demand, turbulence, time. Volatility means it's not stable. It's not consistent across time. So we see volatility in the stock market all the time. We see volatility in certain goods. Nobody predicted that in 2020, the surgical mask industry was going to have to produce much more than it was currently producing. And the truth is, in time, that demand is going to drop off sharply. And I think we're already seeing a trend that way. So volatility means it's extremely unpredictable. Uncertainty refers to the extent to which we can confidently predict the future. So many things are uncertain in life. Many things are uncertain in business. You can gather all the data, you can gather all the information. You may have choice A, B, and C in front of you, but it is uncertain. There's a high level of uncertainty. You can't be confident that what you predict or what you suggest is the best course of action is 100% guaranteed the best source of action. So there are no right and wrong answers. There's no right or wrong answers in this class, unless you go totally off base. There's no right or wrong answers in business. You just have to take the information you have, take your knowledge of the industry, your knowledge of how things have operated, how customers have responded on all these different areas, and make the best choice for strategy you possibly can. And then do everything you can to make it work. And if you have to adjust along the way, you adjust along the way. That's business and that's life. Complexity refers to the number of factors that we need to take into account, the variety and relationships between them. So here's an example. Organizational psychologists talk about simple jobs and complex jobs. A simple job is hard to find in the Western world these days. A simple job means that you are highly supervised, think micromanaged, that you have one simple task to perform. Maybe it's pulling a lever, maybe it's picking parts off an assembly line. You have one simple job and that's all you do all day long. That's a simple job. A complex job means you have a lot of autonomy. That means you supervised, but not heavily supervised. You're given a direction, trained, told what needs to be done, but then you have the autonomy to get it done. And you have multiple things that you need to be doing in that job to get them all done. And it's up to you how you manage your time and how you get them done. But the expectation is still that you'll get them done and get them done at a level of excellence. That's a complex job. Well, that's the same type of world we live in. It's a complex world, and organizations are complex organizations because they're filled with people, and people are complex. So the more complex a situation is, the harder it is to analyze it because you have all these multivariate pieces that you've got to account for. So that's the problem when people try to look at a situation, look at a challenge, and give a simple cause and a simple solution. More than likely, they are not analyzing it completely, or they're not analyzing it fully, and they're not seeing all of these multiple influences that go into the problem. Finally, we have ambiguity. So ambiguity refers to a lack of clarity about how to interpret something. And you're going to run into a lot of ambiguity in this class as you go through the data and work on your papers. And you're going to run into a lot of ambiguity
in your work life, and in life in general. There are just things that it's hard to figure them out and it's hard to interpret them. Information might be incomplete. Information might seem to be contradicting or just very, very fuzzy and very, very vague. So these are all things that we have to deal with. The term is VUCA. It's a part of our lives, so you might as well come to an understanding of it and maybe read up on it a little bit yourselves in your spare time. Now, along these lines, let's talk a little bit about life. Life is challenging, right? Life is hard sometimes. And there's one thing I think that is common to every life is that every person who is alive, regardless of their social class, regardless of their level of wealth, regardless of their level of education, everybody has challenges. Everybody runs into some level of suffering in their lives. A lot of it is not self-inflicted. It just comes and we have to deal with it. One of the best ways to deal with the challenges in life is to have people that you can talk to have people to discuss things with. And one psychologist put it together, I think, very well. He said, life is suffering. Love is the desire to see unnecessary suffering ameliorated, which just means lessened, reduced. So love is the desire to see unnecessary suffering lessened. Truth is the handmaiden of love. Dialogue is the pathway to truth. You can't have truth unless you're willing to have a dialogue with people, especially people you disagree with. Humility is recognition of personal insufficiency and the willingness to learn. We have to realize we don't have all the answers. We don't have everything that's needed in the world to make the world a better place or even to make our own families a better place. We have to be willing to learn. And when we learn, we have to die voluntarily and be born again in great ways and small. The reason you die in great ways and small when you're learning is because you have to take all the dead wood that is not doing you any good, but occupying space in your brain, and you've got to replace it with the learning. And that's why learning is hard. That is why learning is painful, because part of you has to die in effect so that the new life of the new learning can come in and take its place. And for all of this reason, speech must be untrammeled. We must never, ever, ever interfere with someone's right or ability to speak, to express themselves, to share their ideas. That doesn't mean you have to accept every idea that comes forth, but everyone needs to be free to express them, because the exchange of ideas back and forth, discussing them, that's how the very best ideas come to be. That's how the greatest levels of ingenuity and innovation come about. So speech must be untrammeled so that dialogue can take place, so that we can all humbly learn, so that truth can serve love, so that suffering can be ameliorated, and so that we can all stumble forward to the kingdom of God. So speech is really the key. Dialogue is the key. Sharing ideas, whether you like another person's ideas or not, sharing those ideas is the key to moving forward in life and moving forward into the kingdom of God. Now let's talk a little bit about negotiation. I want to share a couple tips to you on negotiating with people, and I encourage you to try these this week. So there is a man named Chris Voss. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. Now, if you've ever read anything regarding negotiation, the usual tactic in negotiation in business, they teach it at Harvard, is that you need to reach a place where each side feels they won, or at least each side won something. So kind of a 50-50 split. But this guy, Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference, he was the lead FBI negotiator. He negotiated with terrorists, criminals, people who took hostages. And so for him, if someone had 10 hostages and he took the approach of, well, I'm just going to split the difference, that means he just wrote five of them off to die and 5 to live. And that's not a situation he could have, not in his line of work. So he worked with his teams to develop negotiating strategies. And a couple of the techniques he used, one is called mirroring, one is called labeling. So mirroring is just simply repeating the last 2 to 3 words of what the person before you said. And what's great about this is you can have a conversation with someone and you get them to talk about themselves more and more and more. And because they're talking about themselves, which people love to do, they're going to think you're the greatest person they ever met, even if you don't say that much. Well, marrying, repeating the last 2 or 3 words of a previous person might look something like this. Say someone comes into you and says, hey, boss, I want a raise. You might respond, you want a raise? So you frame it as a question. And they say, yeah, I've been doing a lot of extra work around here. My work is always at the top level. It's always better than anybody else's that comes in. Of course, that may be true or not, and I think I've really earned it. So you might respond, you've earned it? Yeah, I've really worked hard and I've added a lot of value to this company. And so it goes on and on and on. And they'll keep opening up. And you realize, as the one asking the questions, doing the mirroring, you're not giving any information to the other person, but they keep giving you more and more information. And that puts you in a better place for the negotiation. The other technique is called labeling. The labeling is simply, so you're going through the mirroring, and then every once in a while you interject and it says, it feels like you're really passionate about this, or it seems like you've given this a lot of thought. You're just acknowledging them and their concerns, and that makes them feel listened to. Now, one other thing I'll add here, it's not in the PowerPoint, that we're often afraid to call out the elephant in the room, right? But one of the techniques that Chris Voss recommends is, I don't remember what he called it right now. Oh, he calls it a accusation audit. Says, call out the elephant in the room. Say, hey, I've got bad news for you. I know you hear this every day. You don't want to hear it from me. And just whatever the elephant is in the room, the bad news, the negative pieces, point them out right away. And then you don't have to worry about them anymore. They're on the table, sets both sides at ease. And then you can have your discussion, your conversation, your dialogue, your negotiation. All right, that's all I'll say about that. I will say one more thing about memory before we close out this video. Purpose of your mind is to regulate your body, okay? The purpose of your mind is to maintain your physical presence in this world. So a lot of people think memory, that you remember things exactly as they happen. And that is never true, never right, never the truth. We don't memorize the specific events. We remember the events in general and the consequences of them, so that if a similar situation comes along, our memory says, hey, last time this didn't work out so well for you. Maybe if you're going to do this, do it a different way, or maybe we don't do that at all. Maybe we don't do that at all or make those decisions at all. Now, that can be good or that can be bad, because the way you remember it may have caused you to come up with what I call a competing hidden belief or a competing commitment. And so the problem with that is we don't know if our competing commitments, which are commitments that compete against us accomplishing the goals in our life, we don't know if our competing commitments are real, are true, or not. Are they right or are they wrong? And the only way to do that is to test it. Find a way to be more aware of what you're choosing to do, what your decisions are, then try to figure out why you are making those decisions. And if you figure out, well, it's because I think this or I feel this way, then test that in a safe way
and see if it's true or not. If it's not, you can change your mindset and just open up your world to greater possibilities. Right, the last slide of this PowerPoint is a video. The video is 20 minutes long, and I'm not going to play it here. But I encourage you to pull up the PowerPoint and watch the video. It's on the VUCA concept, and it will just expand your world if you look at this and learn how this how it all relates. And the guy that teaches in this video, he's pretty dynamic. It's a good video. So that's it for week 6 content. Look forward to seeing you all in class this coming week.